Alright, so in this video we're going to be designing high bass 1, which sounds like this. So it's a pretty simple bass. I'm just going to delete all these tracks. We're going to insert a new MIDI track now. So plugins, X Records and Serum. And now we'll copy over this bass pattern. And this is called high bass for a reason. It doesn't really add much power or depth to a track. It really just fills in the mids and the highs and makes it sound a little bit more crunchy. So it's definitely not a bass to be used standalone by itself, if you will. So we're going to add an EQ because of that, because it's not supposed to be a standalone bass. We want to keep that in mind as we're designing it. So it's a pretty straightforward sound. I'm just going to solo this now. We'll mute this. We start with this. Not that interesting, right? So the first thing we're going to do is actually pull the decay down, or the sustain down on envelope 1, so we get more of a stabby sound. So I'm going to pull the sustain down to about minus 40 dB. And I'm going to pull the decay down to about 200 milliseconds, or thereabouts. So now we've got something a little bit more rhythmic. But it sounds a little bit boring, right? We've just got this wave here, this default wave. We are going to keep this, but we're going to turn the unison up to around 8. I'm going to turn the detune down a little bit, and the blend up a fair bit as well. So now we have this. That's sounding a bit more interesting. Let's pretty much do the same with the second oscillator. Again, 8 voices. We'll do a little bit more detune this time, and a little bit less blend. We'll keep the blend where it is. So now we have this. Just a bit more power in there. And we're going to run these both through a filter. But before we do that, we also want to add a sub oscillator. So make sure you have sub enabled on the filter, because we'll be adding that in a second. But we'll enable sub. We won't use this as a sub. We'll just use the square wave over here. Turn the octave up. Just to add a bit more characteristic to it. I'm going to use the MG Low 24. What I'm going to do is just pull the cutoff down a little bit. So now we have this, which, sounds pretty boring, but we're going to modulate. So let's modulate the cutoff with envelope 2. So I'm going to chuck it on there, pull this down a little bit. And I'm going to pull the sustain down and the decay and see how it sounds as I'm doing this. That sounds pretty good to me. So you will watch YouTube tutorials and videos where people say, turn the decay to 370 milliseconds, blah, blah, blah. And that's fine, but you want to be doing this stuff by ear, at least when you're designing your own sounds. There's no reason why you should have 373 milliseconds over, say, 350, unless it sounds better to you. And so don't turn knobs looking for the right numbers, turn knobs listening for the right sound. It's really important. Okay, so now we've got this. That sounds really good, and I just want to add a little bit more bite to this. So I'm going to use a short envelope, very, very short envelope, to modulate the cutoff full. So I'm actually going to pull the decay down to about 25 seconds or 20 milliseconds. Really short, and we're just going to chuck this on and have it all the way up. So now if we disable that, completely changes the sound, right? Cool. So we're going to do 2 more things. We're going to add some distortion to this to make it a little bit more crunchy. So I'm going to enable distortion in the effects tab. I'm going to pick diode 1. We're going to change the filter to pre-distortion. I'm just going to pull this down a little bit. Okay, so now we have this. A little bit too strong, so I'll pull the mix down quite a bit. And let's just check that this is working. Let's mute it and unmute it. So it does add quite a bit. I'm just going to pull this filter up a little bit. Perfect. Okay, now the final thing we're going to do is really cool. So we've got an EQ on here, but because this is Serum, we can actually modulate the EQ. So we're going to have a little peak on this EQ, so by clicking that. And what we're going to do is have this notch kind of move up and down. So let's just turn up the gain so we can see it. We want the frequency to move as the sound plays. Very subtle, but you get this kind of phasing effect, which I really like. And you can hear it if I turn the gain up. But we don't want it that loud. So what we're going to do is apply an LFO to this. So let me turn it up to around here, around 4,000 hertz. And let's apply this LFO and pull it back, say to halfway there. Now it's going a little bit too far, so let's turn this to 4 bars so that it moves up and down over 4 bars. So that's kind of cool. It's just a very subtle effect. It adds movement to the sound. It makes it a little bit more interesting. And that's it. That is High Bass 1. So I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, leave them below and I'll get back to you. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video where we create our second high bass.